Okay, so welcome to the first of the Understanding Project Management podcast. My first guest is Fatehjit Singh. He is a colleague and associate professor at Conestoga. I've worked extensively with Fatehjit. I met him probably about 3 years or so ago. Fatehjit, you'll be able to you'll let me know if I'm right in the timeline. And I remember that I was giving an orientation in Brantford to a new class, and there was a fellow at the back of the class, and I just thought he was a student. We often have
Yes.
mature students, and he was very attentive. And asked a number of good questions and so on. At the end of the session, he came up and introduced himself and said that he's a new instructor at the for our program and wanted to come out and see the orientation. And I was impressed with that, and I've been impressed with that. Fatty did all along in his time. Though the other anecdote that I'll need to give is that he is one of the most impressive editors that I've ever seen. I can I can create some kind of a document that I think is 100%, and I'll give it to Fatehjit, and within probably an hour or two, he politely describes a number of spelling or grammatical or factual errors, which I appreciate. So, anyways, he has a laser-like attention to detail, which is good. So, today we're going to talk about change control. There's a specific topic within project management, and so I thought it was good to talk about this. So enough about me to talk. Yeah, I'm gonna turn it over, and I guess the first question I have is just provide us a little bit of background. What did you do before you came here to Conestoga? So over to you.
All right. So, two things before I answer your question. One is thanks, Dave, for making me your first guest in these new series, and I would also like to thank any viewers who are going to watch these videos. So, okay, now to your question. Before coming to Conestoga, my industry experience is 20 years, out of which 15 years I've worked in projects. So, I'm going to talk about the experience in project management. So it started in 2002. From 2002 to 2006, I worked for an organization which had a huge factory, and they were making heavy engineering equipment. So that is when I started working as the project manager. So I obviously used to interact with the client. We had to order all the raw materials and do all the interaction with other stakeholders. So that was for the 4 years. And then in 2006, I made a move to another organization where I actually entered into the new domain of EPC, project management, engineering, procurement, construction. So this organization, they are global leaders in delivering steel plants. And this was like full-blown project management with engineering and then procurement, construction. Typically, these projects would last from anywhere between between 2 years to 3 or even 4 years, right? So this was for 4 years, and then in 2010, I made like my last move to another organization, which was like a French headquartered organization. Again, EPC sector, but the kind of technology was different. This company is renowned in delivering ASUs, which we call air separation units, or in layman's language, we can call them oxygen plants. And the clients are like different steel industries, petrochemical plants where they need oxygen in bulk. So those were the kind of industries. And I got a lot of exposure to change management, which, I mean, because we always handled these projects on in with the waterfall or the traditional approach, and usually these were firm fixed price contracts. As contractors, we had to commit to a fixed price, and then invariably during the next 3 or 4 years during the execution of the project, a lot of changes happened for good reasons, and there was a lot of change management and change control, which was part of my work.
Right. So yeah, that's our main topic for today. And why did when we were talking about setting up this first podcast, this was a topic that you specifically wanted to talk about. why is it that you wanted to, of all the topics that were on my list, you picked this one? What is it about change control that why did you want to talk about that today? Why, I guess what I'm saying is, why do you see that as being important?
One thing is, I can contribute with some practical advice because I was deeply involved in change control. That is one. I also consider this as very, very important part of EPC projects. Not only you have to, I mean, sometimes there is a conflict of interest. Your own management would want you to deliver everything at a very minimal price to make the maximum profits, whereas the client organization, they are expecting, top of the world quality. And so it's very challenging. You have to engage with your management, the client's management, and you are the main window between these two organizations. So I mean, it's a big challenge. It's a very challenging and also like highly paying. It's very important work, especially for your organization, because the clients, a lot of times they would like to pass on important changes as normal development efforts. I mean, they would not like you to pay for it. So we need to be very meticulous with all the documentation. In fact, it starts with even before the award, when you are negotiating the contract terms and conditions. So basically I found it very, very interesting. It's very interesting for me, very, very important as well, and then it's quite challenging. So these are some of the reasons
Right.
behind this.
So what do you see as the key steps of change control? Like, not necessarily all the nitty-gritties, but can you break it down into, what are the main steps that you see when you executed change control?
Yeah, okay. First of all, I would say even before entering into any new contract, talking of your, like the PMBOK calls it OPAs, organizational process assets. In the contractor's organization, we need to have a very robust change control system backed up with some good software. Okay, so that's one. And another very important thing is, at the time of entering into the signed contract with the client, we need to make sure that there are relevant empowering clauses in the contract which are going to entitle you to seek proper compensation for any changes which the client is going to ask you to make. Okay, so the definition of the change, how the change is going to be recognized, how the change is to be notified, how the change impact is to be proposed, and then finally how the change order is going to be signed between both the parties. So that provisions in the contract are very important. Next thing is, as soon as now we kick off the new project, the contract is in place, the provisions are in place. Next very important thing is the internal kickoff meeting within our team uh, in the contractors organization, where, as the contracts manager, we need to give sensitize the team members on the different change clauses, because a lot of times there is a time period within which, unless we raise a notice of change, we forego any benefits coming out of a change. So we need to sensitize the team that, we have to strictly follow the boundaries of the scope, and if there are any ambiguities, it's best to, resolve them as soon as possible. Any assumptions, so it's best to validate them as soon as possible. And then the scope statement is going to be so important. So I mean, the communication of the importance of these documents to the team, because everyone has to contribute, because these are such large projects. Changes can arrive at any given area, because the PM cannot monitor all the things. So the team members have to be sensitized as soon as the client is exceeding the agreed baselines or the boundaries. The team member has to sensitize this is a change, and they need to know how to use the software system. They need to log those changes. So they need to communication, and they need to be aware how to use the software to bring these changes to the notice of the project manager. So these
Okay.
are some of the important steps.
So why do you, I'm want to pick up on that, you're needing to sensitize the team. So why is that? Because you was that because the team members would not understand what a change is, or do you think they would resist um, the change control process? So what do you mean by sensitizing the team? That's sort of an interesting concept.
Okay, so they won't resist the change management process, but they might not be aware of it. Like we
Okay.
have heard the terms like gold plating. It's not only theoretical, it happens in reality. Sometimes we are trying to appease the client. Sometimes we feel, oh, this is something so minor that even if I do it, if I am the engineer of a particular work package, I think this is very minor. Okay. The client is asking me to just make a small tweak, and then, but the point is these small changes eventually add up to something big. So this
Right.
is where they need to be sensitized, even if it's very small thing, like the 100% rule. I used to tell my team, 100% means not even an extra nut or a bolt we have to give to the client. Nothing
Right.
less, nothing more. So they need to be sensitized on this.
Okay, so you would have team members that, you know, that it's not that they were trying to sneak something through, but they would just perhaps not understand, or they, like you say, there might be a small change that a customer comes and says, well, can you not just do this? And so they might not understand that they should log that as a change and to put it through the
Exactly.
change
Yeah,
control
because
tool.
there are going to be some very explicit changes there. We don't have any problems. It's a big change. The client can never disguise it under a normal development practice. So those changes would come out in the open, and we'll negotiate. And unless we agree for the compensation to the time and the cost, we are not going to implement those changes. So there we are good. But
Right,
these small comments which can come through the engineering drawings, and the PM is not going to get to know about them unless the team members reach out to the PM through the software system.
right.
And everyone is empowered to log as soon as they notice a variation. They are going to log into the central system, and it's also linked with automatic emails. And so once they log it into the system, then the change log is going to be maintained very transparently, and things are not going to be missed out.
Right. Can you think back in your experience of a time when you feel that change control really contributed to the success of the project? Like, was there a case where you kind of went, "Thank goodness we had that change control system"?
No, specifically I won't remember, but I forgot the numbers, but in my resume itself, I'm highlighting three or four big, very high value change orders, like close to 10% of the initial contract value. We were able to manage. So mostly, mostly the most difficult part of a change is to get compensation for the cost from the client. Sometimes they are more willing to compensate you for the time, but normally it's more difficult. So I don't remember the specific numbers, but on several occasions, like there have been 5 to 6 really big change orders. What we were able to deliver through all this change management
Right.
systems.
So those are changes that were captured and compensated for your organization.
Oh yes, oh
Yeah,
yes.
good. Okay, what about, can you think of any times where there should have been some change control and wasn't, that led to problems? Is there any instances of that you can point to where oops, we should have been tighter?
Yeah, again, the instances where we are not insisting in enforcing the contract clauses. There needs to be a very clear a clause in the contract which states that although the client has every right to ask for a change, they can order for a change, but unless the impacts on time and cost are mutually agreed, the contractor is not supposed to start working on the change. Now, sometimes the team members would ignore this out of ignorance or pressures, or sometimes there is a term called going native. I mean, they work so closely with the client that at times they start thinking about, oh yeah, it is needed. I mean, they are so excited to entertain the client. Sometimes it might hurt the interests of the contractor's own organization. So I mean, two things. First, we have to be meticulous in having all these clauses in the contract, which usually are there in every good organization. We have legal people on the payrolls, and we have these standard, we call them boilerplate clauses. And in my organization, we had certain golden and silver rules, so we could never miss out on these contract clauses. So contracts were usually always fine, but then the thing was, some new members are going to come join your team. So to sensitize them, communication is very important. So as long as your team members are sensitized, then the software is in place, the contract clauses are in place. Now it's only the question of making use of them and enforcing those clauses.
Right. That's an interesting point that you mentioned. And again, it's sort of the two things. One is that your focus is on, and this is, I think, in your background, is on contracts, which is where change control becomes even more important in a procurement sort of environment where there's a contract governing the project. But the other part was the human element that you mentioned, is that, and this often happens on projects, is that as project team members work more closely with customers, they'll start to identify with them, sympathize with them, and they might start to do, I think, what you were saying, which was, you really do need this, and well, how much can it be? It's just a small change. I'll just do this one. Don't tell anyone that is a possibility. And so, this is the kind of thing where, again, as you were saying, through sensitizing the team, a good, strong change control system where we can say that team member can still care about and identify with the client, but still represent their organization as well. Like
Exactly. You can
that change
always,
control.
change could also be suggested by the team member, but as soon as they suggest a good change to the client, immediately they also need to log in this new change or deviation in the centralized system so that, we don't want to do any work for free. I mean, it's as
Right,
simple as that.
right. These systems, so in terms for the viewers, so one thing that to make sure everyone's now aware is that there are systems to track this. Were these sort of proprietary systems of your organization, or were these external software tools that were
Uh,
recall
All
that?
right. So whatever I know about them, okay. I handled two systems. The first one was called PIRS, Project Information and Reporting System. The next one was ComQuet, which was fairly new. We got them custom made from external software organizations. Okay. So this
Right,
ComQuet stood for commercial and quality. It has two big modules. Under commercial, it had this change control module, and under quality it had this lessons learned module for continuous improvement. So
right,
okay, we are focused on the change control module, and these are now these days all web based tools, and they are linked with your emails, and there is a whole workflow into them. So all the team members are empowered to log in any new change. The system will automatically give it an ID number, and then it's going to go to the PMs, and there are other gates in the system. It's going to go to the contracts manager, and if he or she decides this is going to have some significant schedule impact, then she can just say, and there are a lot of drop down menus. It's very user friendly. So
right,
he or she can always, pick and send, initiate a workflow going to the schedule manager to work out the schedule impact. Likewise, the contracts manager, and we used to call it the commercial project manager, can also create a parallel workflow going to the cost manager to work out the cost impacts. So, and everyone keeps getting alerts, and you can also log in the notice, the change notice period from the contract, so that those important dates are not missed out.
right, right,
And another very important feature of these softwares, so once you do all the working on them, and you can keep on saving in the draft mode while you are still, and not everything will happen online. A lot of offline discussions will happen because this integrated change control in typical engineering contexts, you have to get inputs from different, even within engineering there are 7 to 8 different departments: civil, electrical, instrumentation, static, rotating equipment, so piping engineering, okay, civil. So you need to get inputs from all of them, so you can keep on collating the information, still keeping them as draft. Once everything is complete, and I'm talking from the contractor's point of view, and then you are going to hold some internal discussions with your management, and once they're satisfied, now the beauty of these softwares also is basically you need 3 documents, like the 3 formal documents which you have to formally send to the client. The first one is the change notice, which you have to sent within certain timelines, okay,
yeah,
which is kind of a brief thing. And then the big thing is the change proposal, which you will send out of doing all the impact assessment, getting internal approvals from the sponsors, and sending the detailed change proposal. Again, the top pages could be like couple of sheets. These are like the system was integrated with Microsoft Word, so it will automatically generate these, like the change notice, which you will just take a printout, sign it, send to the client. Next, change proposal, a couple of pages, but then of course you are going to append a lot of details, backup details. You need to justify for all the extra dollars or time that we are, seeking from the client, because most of the times, I mean, most of these projects are not only time constrained, they are also cost constraints. The
right,
client is not having any surplus time or money, so a lot of backup documents. So change proposal is the heart of the whole thing, right?
right,
With change notice, the important thing is we don't miss out on the timelines. Otherwise, we lose our rights to claim compensation, and then the change
Right.
proposal is the heart of it, and we need to append as much as is needed, and the final output is the change order. Once the
Yeah.
commercial, and then the negotiations will happen after the change proposal. You're going to, and that is offline, you are going to negotiate with the client, the representatives from the client and the contractor side, and then once they agree on the compensation for the cost and the time, then the system will again generate a change order. So these are the three steps: change
Yeah.
notice, proposal, and change order. And the change order has to be formally signed by both the parties.
Right.
Once it
You
is
can
signed,
see
it acts like an amendment to the contract, and
right.
now we are good to go. Now we are good
Yeah.
to start working on that change.
Yes, well, you can certainly see the robustness and the um, size and effort that has taken place in the Understanding PM textbook. There is a very high level view of the process, which you've really outlined here, but you can see the amount of systems development and communication and so on, and how important it is to the organization. I guess in closing, is there one sort of key lesson or message that you'd like to leave with the viewers? Sort of as if there's one thing you could tell, new PMs embarking about change control, what would it be? And then we'll wrap up after that.
Okay, so I would just ask all the viewers to be very clear on the difference between a good change control or a scope change vis-a-vis gold plating or scope creep. When the team members are not sensitized, then we run the risk of doing the gold plating or the scope creep. We need to understand and remain away from kind of a scope creep. We need to always welcome good changes, but never bypass the system. Learn the software if it's new to you. Initially be very clear on what constitutes a change. Follow the procedures so that not only the client has to be kept happy, our own contractors economic interests have to be kept in mind.
Right, right. That's good. Well, thank you very much, Fatehjit. You've taken us on an interesting journey through change control, and again, hopefully, as I was mentioning, the viewers can see just how significant this topic is, and I think you've demonstrated that. So again, thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you a great deal in the future. So take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.